through when the growth look good on you. Best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes, people, you know what time it is, you know what it is. We're back in the building. Another post-match reaction as Liverpool bid farewell for the 22-23 Premier League season at Anfield with their game against Aston Villa. Guys, before we dive in, please make sure you like, please make sure you share, and please make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, we are so close to 400 subscribers. Again, just like to say, I appreciate everybody who's obviously hit that subscribe button. I know there's a lot of content creators out there, especially Liverpool ones in this space. So I appreciate every single subscriber. Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting summer as well. We're gonna have a lot of videos for you guys, a lot of live videos and stuff like that. So please, man, make sure you guys join in, you know, with the discussions. So with Liverpool, we've got it's a bit of a funny one. Should I say? I was gonna dive into something else, but we'll get into that later. But you know, Liverpool, you know, last match at Anfield this season, Aston Villa, difficult proposition. You know, we're at the end of the season, so I'm almost reaching that point of like, all right, cool. You know what? The game is the game at the end of the day. Win, lose, draw. Doesn't even really matter at this point. Liverpool are more or less in the Europa League. Top four looks like, I mean, it's technically, mathematically not done and dusted. So you could say the top four battle is still technically on. But, you know, with Liverpool being, I think, 4 points off both Manchester United and Newcastle, who just need to pick up a point in both their next games, it's basically done and dusted. So all of the optimism and, you know, the optimistic fans out there, I think now their hope has been killed, to be honest with you. It was one of those kind of games. Villa took the lead, probably should have taken the lead earlier on with a Watkins penalty. Didn't. They took the lead, and then obviously we score a late goal with Robertson Firmino, his last game at Anfield. Just want to say quickly, big up Firmino. You know, been so important for Jurgen Klopp, you know, during his time here. He's been an integral part of this team for years and years and years. And I think when you're looking at someone like a Firmino, you know, someone who kind of epitomizes everything with the Jurgen Klopp kind of era, or shall we say this first era, so to speak, because obviously now we're in a transitional period of play. But when you think of someone like Roberto Firmino, someone who, you know, it's so weird because, you know, when you look at his goals and assist record, it's actually really, really good. It is actually really, really good when you think about it. You know, he's been here for a while, signed by Brendan Rodgers. At first, when we signed him, I think it was one of those signings that you kind of thought to yourself, right, you know, is this guy really going to be, you know, we signed him to effectively play up front. I think Brendan Rodgers, wasn't that the season that we signed Benteke? I might be wrong, but I'm sure we had Benteke given out. I think it was around that time. I'm sure we had Benteke, and he was supposed to obviously be the number 9. You know, come in, score these goals. Firmino was supposed to play in behind him, and it was supposed to be this, like, you know, this kind of new kind of football that Brendan Rodgers wanted to play. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers then gets sacked. Jurgen Klopp then comes in, and, you know, he elevated Firmino, put him in this kind of role where he would just become this selfless false 9. And you know, when I'm thinking about it, that role that Firmino played throughout his time here at Anfield, but he's probably the best false 9, if we're not counting Lionel Messi. But he's probably, outside of that, he's probably the best one. If I'm being totally honest with you, you know, that's probably the highest compliment that I can give him. You know, wonderful player, liked by everybody. Not really a bad word to say, you know, about him, you know, in a general sense. Had his ups and downs, you know, in terms of probably not scored as much as we would have liked, so to speak, but he still scored a ton of goals. That's the maddest thing with him. You know, it's like he scored so many goals, but he probably should have scored a lot more You know, he's had his bad seasons and stuff like that, but overall, he's been so important to Liverpool. And again, he gave us a gift before he left, because without his goal, I don't think Liverpool were going to win that game. I don't think Liverpool were going to win that game. I think when we're looking at the game as a whole, me personally, I know we had the disallowed goal with Gakpo. From my understanding of that goal, from the letter of the law, he technically was offside. Obviously, that's up for debate. I'm not really going to get into that, to be honest with you. It was given as offside at the end of the day. So it's offside. You know, you just got to kind of move on and just kind of live with it. But even outside of that, to be honest with you, we didn't really play well. It was a very poor performance. Villa were really up for it. Villa deserved that draw, to be honest with you. They deserved the draw more than we did. I think they done enough in the game. They were tenacious in the battle. They had so much intensity. You know, John McGinn, Jacob Ramsay in the middle of the park, Douglas Luiz kind of controlling things. You know, they bossed that midfield. They bossed our midfield, which was a bit of a surprise because we were coming into this game, you know, in good form. You know, I think it was at 7 on the bounce or something like that. Had a couple of clean sheets in the last couple of games. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, all right, cool. Villa's still a tough game, regardless of what your form is like. With how Villa have been performing recently, Villa's still going to be a tough game. But, you know, when we come into this game, it just lackluster. You know, the players look like they were already on holiday. They kind of look like they were like, you know what, they've checked out for the season. To be honest, everything's done and dusted. You know, nothing really. It just reminded me almost of like we were playing at that leisurely kind of last game of the season type of vibe. And, you know, it's the whole farewell, Milner, Firmino, Ox and Keita, and it was all of that to me anyway. That's kind of how I looked at it. So when Villa come there and they've still got a point to prove, they're trying to get into the Europa League as well. When they come there and they're putting in that kind of performance, you know, they'll probably be a little bit aggrieved that they probably couldn't come away with the win. So yeah, it was a bit of a tricky one. But, you know, if we head into the game, here's obviously my ratings for the match in itself. I gave Ali the man of the match, to be honest with you. He made a brilliant save. I want to say it was from Jacob Ramsay. I remember that save. Ramsay scores that. I don't see Liverpool winning that or even getting a draw, to be honest with you. I think they would have closed up shop enough in order to get themselves the victory. They played so well. They really did. Under Unai Emery, you know, he's definitely, or for me anyway, he has to be a candidate for manager of the season. The way he's been able to turn Aston Villa around, you know, into this team who are difficult to play against. But that's what Unai Emery is all about. I know obviously he had his time at Arsenal. I think maybe that was just wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. Like when he was at Arsenal, the kind of development that they were trying to go through, you know, with everything that they had just been through, you know, coming off of Arsene Wenger as well. You know, it's difficult. It's not easy when you're trying to take over from such a legend like Arsene Wenger, you know, to then come into a team like Arsenal who expect to be in one position and maybe didn't really understand the kind of difficulties that they would have to go through to get themselves back up to where they want to be. You know, it just didn't really work out. But when I look at his work for Villarreal, I think to myself, this is a very, very good manager. PSG, very, very good manager. And he come to Aston Villa, and this season, he's really turned it around for them. They look like, I never thought they'll get relegated, maybe so. But they just look like they would be, you know, further down in the league, you know, potentially even bottom half if they continued under Steven Gerrard, you know, how poor they were under him. But, you know, with Emery, they've just turned into this force, and I think they're going to be a problem next season wherever they finish up, obviously at the end of this season. But obviously looking at the ratings, as I said, I gave Ali the man of the match. I think it was, I feel like you could see a lot of reds in here, a lot of sixes and stuff like that. For me, it was that kind of a performance as a whole. Like I said, I think Liverpool played really, really poorly, you know, in the game. Obviously move on to Konate. Oh my God, Konate. I don't really know how many more times I can keep going on about Konate. I feel like I've spoken about him so much, especially since we've moved to this new kind of formation, you know, with the... It's mad because you want to say 3 at the back, but technically it's almost like we've only got 2 at the back, you know, at times when you've got Konate and Van Dijk who are realistically trying to, you know, defend back there by themselves with very little help coming from either a Robbo or Trent or Fabinho, whoever is supposed to be back there defending. But ultimately, that's the role that, you know, Klopp wants them to kind of play. You know, Konate down that right-hand side of the defence. Felt like he was, when he came up against Watkins, again, another striker. You know, I think he had decent return in terms of like his duels and stuff like that. But as an overall, you know, Watkins was giving these lot trouble, both him and Van Dijk. To be honest, I felt like he was giving the defense as a whole. He was stretching play very, very well. You know, which was, you know, pulling Konate into areas that he doesn't want to be in. And this is where I keep going on about having a right-sided centre back who's just not comfortable in those kind of positions when you're asking him to defend out wide, or when you're asking him to have the ball out wide and stuff like that. Barring there was a brilliant ball, I think he played over the top. I think it might have been offside. But other than that, you know, when you're asking him to do things out wide, he just isn't comfortable. And we're seeing it more and more and more. And I don't think, obviously, with time, you should inevitably get better. But, you know, when I saw the game, you know, against Villa, I just thought, nah, it's just not really it for me in terms of that role. I think he's best served to play in the centre of defence, where he doesn't have to keep going so far out wide to defend. He can just kind of defend his area in the middle of the pitch, and he's fast and strong enough to be able to handle that. And I think Liverpool definitely, as I keep saying, need to sort out that area of the pitch. Centre back Van Dijk, he was a bit better than Konate, I would say that. Yeah, it was like a decent performance from Van Dijk, but again, it's difficult because obviously where you've got the two at the back when they're defending, my issue with this whole system formation that it is that Liverpool are playing is that either Trent or Fabinho, whoever it is going to be for next season, as an example, where you've got Robbo, and we'll get into him in a second, where you've got Robbo who lacks the discipline to kind of play in a back three, clearly. We need someone to be able to drop into that area. And if someone isn't dropping into that area, it just causes more problems, in my opinion, because then yes, you can defend with two at times, but where you defend so high up the pitch, you're going to leave yourself open like for counter-attacks. And Villa were really good when it came to the counter-attacks. And that's where I feel like there's always going to be a problem. Van Dijk, he handled things pretty well. Nothing too amazing, to be honest with you, but you know, it was like a okay performance from him. Robbo gave him a 6. Like I keep saying, it's just the discipline for me, and I'm going to probably end up saying it in our last game of the season. You can see here up and down that left-hand side. For me, this doesn't work. I'll be totally honest with you. I think this isn't something that we can continue with. I believe, you know, we need to get. I'd rather have someone who isn't so attack-minded now. Again, this is only if you're playing at the back three. If you're going to play with a 4 like we used to, that's different, because then I guess in that kind of formation, you kind of need Robbo to be able to get up and down and help out with the left winger. But in this formation, we don't need that. You really don't need them to be bombing up all the time. You know, there's got to be a time and a place that you do that. And I just think, as I keep saying, Robbo really does lack that discipline to be able to play that role. And I just think that, you know, in the wide areas for Villa, you know, they'll get in a little bit of joy both on the left and right hand side. Trent had again decent game from Trent. He was obviously he's trying to make things happen. Got caught out defensively a couple of times, obviously on that right hand side. I remember I think he was speaking about his positioning. Obviously, everyone's talking about it, but he was speaking about his positioning, you know, in the team, and he was saying, you know, when we have the ball, he's in the middle. When we don't have the ball, he's out there at right back. Again, that's going to be something that we're going to need to be able to sort out. But I think that will always come from the defense in itself. If you've got someone who's comfortable out there on that right centre back role and that left centre back role, obviously for Fabinho on the other side, I think it makes it a bit more easier for Trent to maybe not have to worry so much defensively. Picked up a yellow card just like Konate and Fabinho, you know, so that kind of tells you the kind of game that we were having. You know, he was more, again, trying to make things happen, but it just wasn't really happening, you know, for him. Not all of his fault, of course not. You know, he definitely wasn't the worst performer, but for me, it was a meaty performance, if I'm being honest. Looking at Fabinho, gave him a 5.5. Should have been booked way earlier than he was in the game. All he kept doing was fouling. All he kept doing was late to challenges all the time. You know, like I said, I was surprised that he picked up the yellow card so late in the game in itself. Should have had a yellow from before, which would have changed the way he played. And if that would have changed the way he played, you know, it could have been completely techie for him. You know, could have easily got himself sent off, you know, with the amount of challenges that he was making just late, you know, in my opinion anyway, to everything. You can see here, look at the ground duels, you know, 8 of them, only 2 of them. You know, Aston Villa really bossed that midfield area for me. And accurate. He only made 38 passes, obviously, in the game. Decent accuracy, to be honest with you. Lost possession 8 times, look, 6 fouls. Like I said, he could have got himself booked a lot earlier than he actually did. But, it's just one of them kind of things. And everyone's been talking him up. As I said, it's when it comes to games like this where the formation or whatever tactic doesn't necessarily work, how do you change things up and stuff like that? But we'll get onto that a little bit later. Jordan Henderson, for me, poor game again. He runs around a lot. I will definitely give him that. He runs around a lot. He tries to be that aggressor, I guess, in the midfield area, but it's kind of really to no avail. Unfortunately, he's playing in that position, in that kind of new 8 position that we've got in the team, and for me, it just doesn't really work. That whole right-hand side for me defensively is so poor defensively. They can have their day. Konate, good defender. Trent, obviously fantastic on the ball. Hendo, when he wants to, when things are working, can work. And then obviously Salah. But I just think that right-hand side is definitely an area that Klopp's going to definitely need to look at, come next season. We've got Curtis Jones, gave him a 6. This is probably his worst performance in this run that he's had. But again, it's weird. You need these performances in your makeup for someone who's not played that much football, especially in a row. And there's obviously going to come a down period where at the end of the season as well. So all of these kind of little caveats. But for me, yeah, Jones wasn't really that good, to be honest with you. And, just kind of goes to what I was saying about the midfield. The midfield for me was complete and utterly bossed by Aston Villa. And they definitely won that battle, and it helped towards, them getting the point in the game. Diaz, we'll go to Diaz this time, actually. We'll start off on the left-hand side. Diaz, gave him a 5.5. For me, he was absolutely poor. Now, a lot of people keep giving these caveats. I spoke on the Jerry James show yesterday. Make sure you guys go check that out. We're doing a little tactics board. Spoke about Diaz. I gave my opinion on what I think about Luis Diaz. I think he's a very, very talented player. But I feel like when it comes to Diaz, it's like he's a bit of a maverick. He's one of those players you need to just let the shackles go. You can't really, lock him in with all of this being so rigid. There needs to be some level of fluidity, should I say, within your style of play in order to get the best of Diaz. I think if we were a lot more fluid in what we were trying to do, I think we'd see a sick Diaz. We'd see almost like a Mahrez on the right-hand side, but we'd see that for Liverpool on the left-hand side. Someone who's, who can cut in, he can run out wide, quick, quite tenacious, got the intensity, all of these kind of things. People are, again, your points are, but when Diaz joined, I think when he joined, it was just the bounce. For me, that's what I was always seeing from Diaz, was you're seeing a bounce from a team who are literally just on their knees, really tired, lackluster, and all of that in terms of the performances we were putting in at the back end of last season. Mane and Salah not really performing that well. So him coming in was almost like a breath of fresh air. But I've seen too many performances even within that, and obviously this season before his injury. I was just thinking to myself, he's at the beginning of the season before he was injured. The games that he played well in, Liverpool didn't play well in. And that told me kind of everything I was already thinking about Diaz, is that when we are not playing well, or we're losing, or trying to get a goal for a draw and things like that, that's when you will see the best of Diaz. Why? Because then it's all about, bro, we just need to go. Like, I always think to that Napoli game where it was like he just took the mantle on himself, because that is Diaz. I think that is the real Diaz. I think if you can get him playing like that, oh my goodness, I think then we've got a really good... There's a difference between being a good player and top class Mahrez level. He's not on that level, in my opinion. I think Mahrez is a level above that. And the way you get to those kind of levels is if you play to their strengths. And I don't think in this team under Jurgen Klopp we ever do that with a lot of players. We just about do it with Trent, kind of thing, and everyone else is kind of like just fitting in around. But in regards to Luis Diaz's performance, 5.5, very poor performance. To be honest, I don't really care that you've just come back from injury. I can only judge you on the game that I'm watching. So in terms of the game in itself, it was a poor performance. Dribble attempts 5, you only got 1 success in that. he was trying to do a lot of these battles and stuff like this, you know, trying to win the ball back, and that he won half of the ground duels that he did obviously have in the game. Lost possession obviously 14 times, was fouled 4 times, fouled, you know, it was one of those kind of performances from him. I mean, yes, you want to say come out of injury, you want to this, that, and the other. I don't feel like him coming back from injury anyway is some of the things that he does. I don't feel like that's because he's just come back from injury, because everyone is so quick to big him up. And this is what I never understand. Everyone's so quick to big him up when he just came back from injury and he was playing okay, in my opinion. And the second he has a bad game, oh, but he's just come back from injury. Well, the same caveat's got to work the other way. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It can't just be when he's playing well, oh, but look how amazing he is when he comes back from injury. And then the second he has a really crap game, then it's like, oh, but he's just come back from injury. You know, to me, that doesn't make any sense, to be honest with you. But, you know, it is what it is when it does come to those things. Looking at Gakpo, I gave him I think it was 6.5. He was okay. He was trying to be everywhere, as he always is in games. I just, like I said yesterday on the Jerry James show, he fades so much in and out of games. The problem that he's going to have moving forward, again, this might take time, but I can only judge on what I can see. This hindsight thing that a lot of people like try to do, it doesn't really work. This ain't, there's just certain people you just can't really tell. But when I look at someone like Gakpo, when you fade out of a game, it makes it very difficult then for the Salahs, the Diaz, or whoever's playing on the wings. Their game then becomes a lot more difficult because you faded out and you're supposed to be, obviously, we're trying to turn him into the Firmino. So you're supposed to be almost that link man, that kind of connector, you know, so to speak. So if you fade out the game, then it puts the onus then on a Salah, on a Diaz. You need to then have an even better you need to then be amazing now, because the guy that you're trying to use to link play and everything like that isn't really doing it. He's kind of just here, there, and everywhere, but he's doing a whole lot of nothing. So it becomes difficult. And I just felt like that was the kind of game that he was having, you know, unlucky obviously with the offside goal and stuff like that. And again, the stats might have then, if that had gone in, people would be like, oh, but he scored. You know, again, I don't really care about the stats. It's the performances that I'm looking at. And when I'm looking at the performance, for me, he was very meaty, but he was better than most. He was better than most in the team. And then obviously Mo Salah, gave him a 6. Poor game. Dribble attempts 8, only won 2 of them. Ground duels 13 and only won 3 of them. Lost the possession God knows how many times, to be honest with you. But 25 times, that's a lot. That's a lot for a guy who only made 8 dribbles and you lost the ball for 25 times. That's crazy. That is actually kind of crazy when I think about it. Again, this goes back to what I was saying about the stats and stuff. When it comes to performance, Mo Salah, he's not been it this season for me. His performance level for me has been 5, like as an overall over the season. 5, maybe you can 5, 6. I would say between there, maybe I'll give him a 5.5 in terms of his performances this season. But his stats, again, Salah's always going to eat. I keep saying it. Salah is going to eat regardless of what anyone thinks. Whatever I think, whatever anyone else thinks, he is always going to eat, because he's just that type of player now. He's here for the numbers. He wants to get the assist, and the assist was very good. That's the craziest thing. The assist was so good outside of the boot into Firmino. Oh, that was brilliant. That was brilliant play from Mo Salah. But other than that, you were really nowhere to be seen, to be honest with you. And unfortunately, that kind of was his game. And to me, that's just kind of been him this season, to be honest with you. And when we're looking at just a couple of things here, when we're looking at a couple of the stats, obviously from the game, Villa obviously on the right, Liverpool on the left. Liverpool lost the possession a lot more times than Aston Villa did. Aston Villa won more duels in totality. We won more aerial duels in the game. For me, Villa just wanted it more. That's how I looked at the game. Villa really did just want it a lot more than we did. Big chances. Villa had 3, and this is what I was saying when people, we were unlucky and this, that, and the other. Were we? Were we that unlucky? Villa had 3 big chances. We had 1. We had 1 big chance in the game. Do you know what I mean? They missed 2 of those big chances. So for me, like I said, Villa will feel aggrieved that they didn't get the victory, in the game in itself, kind of thing. Yeah, keeper was making saves, their keeper made 4 to our 2, but nothing really of note. When it comes to that, you got Diaz trying to shoot every 2 seconds and stuff like that. Something he needs to realistically stop doing, in my opinion. Or let me take it back. Not even stop doing. Just be a bit more wiser with your shooting from outside the box. Just understand there's probably more of a time and a place. When things are closed down, you can't shoot. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's so simple, but he just always just tries it, and it's just like your success rate is. I don't even know. I'd have to check the stats, but your success rate isn't really that good. So why do you keep trying to do something that isn't really working? It's almost like that Oxlade-Chberlain thing. They can shoot, but the reality of them scoring, that many goals from outside the box is kind of rare. I don't want to say slim to none, because they can shoot from outside the box, but it's just like, kind of thing for me anyway. But obviously that's just it. Obviously we look here, Villa again, down our right-hand side. As I said before, that right-hand side definitely is an area of the pitch that we need to sort out. I don't think getting in a new midfielder anyway would sort that out. I think it is generally down to the roles. And I think it's what Klopp is asking these players on that right-hand side to do. So whether it is Trent, whether it is Hendo, whether it is Salah, whoever's on that side, we need to sort it out. Now, the left-hand side isn't exempt. Let me not sit here and say, oh, yeah, but the left-hand side is perfect, because it's not perfect. At the end of the day, the left-hand side also needs to be worked out. And I think that's where I think you can get at Liverpool quite easily, is down the sides of our team. So, it's one of those things. And Villa executed their plan very, very well, and they were they were on the cusp of getting the victory. So, like I said, they'll be a bit annoyed that they couldn't obviously get themselves the victory. But, it was one of those things. Liverpool obviously end the campaign at Anfield 1-1. Jacob Ramsay, I like him. Looks like a very good player in the middle of the park. I was a little bit iffy with him. I think it's just more I was thinking about how much would it cost to get someone like a Jacob Ramsay. But if you ask me to choose, watching the player, if you ask me to choose between like a him or a Mason Mount, someone that we're so heavily linked with, I'd rather go Jacob Ramsay all the time, as opposed to trying to go for Mason Mount. I just feel like he'd fit the team a lot better, a lot more youthful, energetic. He's very cute in those kind of forward areas. He can score himself a goal. And defensively, he's really, really good in those kind of transitions. And he's got the energy and the stamina to be able to play that. John McGinn, very good player. When you need someone to be tenacious, someone to really have that, that steel, he's probably the one that they look at. Douglas Luiz, again, very cute player on the ball, good technical ability. So, a lot to be pleased if you're a Villa fan, if I'm being honest with you, because you guys have got the makeup to really go on next season and just kind of build upon what Unai Emery has obviously done so far for you. In regards to Liverpool, still a lot of work, a lot of holes in the team, which is so crazy when you think about where we've come from to this point here, where we're now in a position where a lot needs to be done in order to even get to that level. Forget the level that Manchester City's at. We're not even close to that, and I don't think we'd even close that. Well, we might be able to close the gap, but it will just be closing the gap upon Manchester City. If you're talking about then taking it to the next level, it's going to require a lot of other factors, a lot more factors than it did before. Before, I never used to think, we were just in a position where it was like, okay, we're in this position now where the team feels like they're so strong. The other teams are so far off of what they are trying to do, so they're not going to really catch us. Now we've fallen so far behind now. Where do you even go, kind of from here? But, it's kind of the catch-22, to be honest with you. But, we'll wait and see. But, guys, that is my post-match reaction. Liverpool versus Aston Villa, 1-1. We bid farewell to James Milner, Roberto Firmino, Oxlade-Chberlain, Naby Keita. I mean, whatever you want to say about, the last two, it is what it is. James Milner, signed by Brendan Rodgers. I think that was a very good signing at the time. A player who had won, so much at Manchester City, understood what it meant to be a winner. And I think we didn't have that in the team at the time. So when you're getting in a player like that, who's so experienced, especially in the Premier League, you got to get these players in, especially on a free. You're like, oh, come on, man, that's a no-brainer. Probably the best free signing that we've ever made, alongside like a Joe Matip, but I'd probably say even James Milner probably tops that list. And obviously Firmino, as I mentioned before, integral to, what Jurgen Klopp needed his team to do. Mane, Salah, Firmino, that front three will always be remembered regardless of anything. So yeah, man, big up those two players. Well, big up everyone, to be honest with you, man. They played some parts in what we were trying to do over these last few years, but now we're entering into a new phase. Can we get the new players to kind of, fix up? And are we going to see the same level of success that we've obviously had? I hope a lot more than obviously what we've had, but it's going to be difficult to kind of tell, and it's going to be difficult to see. But we'll wait and see. Guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell. I'm G, post-match reaction done and dusted. I'm out.